Doamnelor, domnilor, bine v-am găsit, urmăriți Lumea Diplomatică. În următoarele 25 de minute intrăm în culisele negocierilor și acordurilor ce pot rescrie istoria Europei în următorii 50 de ani. România a găzduit reuniunea în format B9 la București. Este un cadru de dialog internațional care a fost creat în urmă cu mai bine de 10 ani, la inițiativa României și a Poloniei. În acel moment, țările de pe flancul estic au văzut provocările de securitate din regiune, iar la reuniunea din acest an a fost adusă în discuție înainte de toate tema securității, modul în care statele de pe flancul estic se vor coordona în așa fel încât să existe un răspuns comun și un plan comun la summitul NATO care se va desfășura în luna iulie a acestui an la Ankara, în Turcia. Totodată, o premieră pentru această reuniune B9 desfășurată la București e legată și de participarea unor reprezentanți ai țărilor nordice. Vorbim despre Regatul Danemarcei, despre Regatul Suediei, dar și despre Finlanda, țări importante care au un cuvânt de spus în cadrul Alianței Nord-Atlantice. Totodată, un reprezentant important a fost și cel al Regatului Norvegiei. Norvegia este un important partener al României în cadrul Alianței Nord-Atlantice. Chiar dacă Regatul Norvegiei nu e parte din Uniunea Europeană, există legături speciale între țările membre ale UE și Regatul Norvegiei. De altfel, Norvegia are un rol aparte în tot ceea ce ține de arhitectura de securitate europeană, prin faptul că structurile militare norvegiene pot urmări în zona arctică toate mișcările semnificative ale Federației Ruse. Diplomația norvegiană are ca obiectiv principal menținerea unor legături cu țările de pe flancul estic. Tocmai din această perspectivă există un grant norvegian aprobat oficial de guvernul de la Oslo, iar România a primit prin acest program o sumă de 600 de milioane de euro. Sunt bani pe care îi va putea folosi pentru a susține tot ceea ce înseamnă inițiativele pentru promovarea valorilor democratice. Însă, mai mult decât atât, vorbim și despre misiunile militarilor norvegieni care se implică pentru a proteja flancul estic al Alianței Nord-Atlantice. În acest context, urmăriți în continuare un interviu în exclusivitate cu ministrul Afacerilor Externe al Regatului Norvegiei, care a participat la reuniunea B9 de la București. Your Excellency, welcome at Lumea Diplomatică, welcome in Romania. We are very honored to have you here.
And I'm very happy to be on your show.
How would you describe the current relationship between Norway and Romania in today's security environment?
Well, I think they are very strong, very positive. They have grown fast over the last years. So it's a good relationship that is still developing to become even better. And it is precisely because of the new security environment. Serious countries who are like-minded in outlook on security and what we think about Russia, the war in Ukraine, the future of NATO, the importance of transatlantic cooperation. We need to work closer together. And I think the way the world has developed has actually brought Romania and Norway even closer together. Even if we are seemingly far away geographic, there are similarities between us.
Where do you see NATO today, and how must the alliance transform itself in order to survive and remain credible in the future?
This is something we are discussing almost every day, and here in Bucharest in the B9 plus Nordic summit that I just attended, and in many other quarters. I think the answer is simple. We need a stronger Europe in a stronger NATO. What does that mean? It means to make sure that NATO remains as relevant that it was, or even more relevant. We need to strengthen the defense capacities of Europe. We need to spend more money on defense, but even more importantly, we have to spend them smartly, strategically, and jointly. And that will create a Europe that is a stronger partner for the US, and that should make the US more confident that it's smart of them, for their own sake, to stay committed to NATO. So that is the answer, and it has to do with classical defense, it has to do with broader societal defense and resilience, has to do with economic security, and also has to do with the defense of our democratic institutions and our democratic culture.
What means security, economic security?
So economic security means that we, in addition to being able to defend ourselves with military means against aggression, we also have to be able to keep operating even if we have shocks in energy like we had after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, but also now during the Hormuz Strait crisis. How can we be more resilient? How can we make sure that more of the critical value chains are under control of countries that we trust, each other for instance, but also within the broader West. And economic security is now becoming an important dimension of security. It's, I would say, it's the dimension of the same theme as more the military security.
At a time when many Europeans openly question whether the United States could one day reduce its commitment in Europe, how secure is the American role in European defense today?
I think we should separate between presence and commitment. I think it's very clear that the US will become less present, meaning less troops, not zero of course, but less troops than in the past. I think that's a development that has happened over time. But it's important for us to separate it from the US commitment, because it is perfectly possible, if we are planning and using the necessary time, that we Europeans can take more of the burden of defending Europe and allow the Americans to do other things, as long as we have this ultimate guarantee from the US. And that's why I say maybe the way to maintain the US commitment is through transitioning more of the burden. We used to talk about burden sharing in NATO, that it should be shared more evenly. Now we actually speak about burden shifting, meaning Europe does more in Europe, America do more elsewhere, but we are still the closest allies. And I think it's important to remind each other that we are 32 members in NATO, Romania, Norway, and 30 others. And we are all committed to each other. This is not only an organization for American support to Europe or European support to America. It's also a bilateral commitment between all these countries that we are there for each other. You know, if Latvia is invaded, we will go and fight. And if Northern Norway is invaded, they will come and fight with us. And this is the whole idea. And because we made that clear to people, they are not coming to attack us.
What do you believe Russia wants at this stage of the war?
First, I think Putin made a massive strategic blunder, a massive mistake by believing that he could take over Ukraine, take over Kyiv in a few days or weeks. Remember that in the very early days of the full-scale invasion, the troops almost reached they actually did reach the airport outside Kyiv, and troops were progressing far beyond where they are now. But the Ukrainians showed much more resilience, much better ability to fight back, and Ukraine is still there. And yes, Russia has occupied around 20% of Ukraine's territory, but that also means that 80% is under the control of the sovereign Ukrainian government. That's a massive success already for Ukraine and a massive failure for Russia. So I believe actually that Russia would like to get out of this, but I don't think they know exactly how, because they will not admit failure. They think that they need to get something, and they're trying.
What to get?
Well, I mean, if you ask what they say, they want more. I mean, which I fundamentally disagree with, of course. But the Russians say they need more of Donbass, for instance. That's not going to happen because Ukraine is not going to give it to them, and they will not win it militarily, because the Ukrainians have built very impressive fortifications and developed this large kill zone, as it's called now, where it's impossible to effectively penetrate from Russia. So the war is quite static, and we need a political solution. And you know, right now, I just met President Zelensky, who was here in Bucharest for the meeting, and you know, he can report, and I agree that it's hard, but things are a little bit better now for Ukraine and a little bit worse for Russia. So why would Russia get anything that they don't deserve? So I think, you know, as long as we are able to keep the commitment, keep supporting them with military means, keep economic support, the more I think we will demonstrate to President Putin that this was a strategic failure that should not be repeated. because I believe neither Romanians nor Norwegians want to live in a Europe where this kind of behavior is okay. You know, we don't want that kind of Europe. So our support to Ukraine is not only a support to the people of Ukraine, it's actually a support to us, because they are doing the heavy lifting of saying no on our shared behalf to what Russia was trying to do. And frankly, I am an optimist in the long run, but it's going to be many hard decisions before we have real peace.
What means hard decision?
We have to continue a strong support. We have to continue to put economic pressure on Russia. Ukraine will have to keep fighting, and they want to keep fighting. And I think the best ticket out of this war is that we, Europeans and the Americans, can come up with some credible security guarantees, so that at least we can get to a ceasefire, an end of hostilities, which is not the same as peace. And then from a more, from that position, being able to negotiate the final peace. And in that negotiation, it's very important for me to say that we don't want a new Yalta. And Yalta, I mean the agreement between Stalin and Western powers in Yalta, in Ukraine, by the way, in the end of the Second World War. The meeting in Yalta in February, I believe it was, in 1945, was actually only supposed to plan for the last months of the war, because at that time the Allied forces and the Soviet Union were going to win. But what it turned out to be was a division of Europe into East and West, and which lasted, in this country at least until 1989. We don't want to see that again further east. We don't want to give imperialistic authoritarian power some kind of sense that they own other countries. Russia, be my guest, they decide in Russia, but we're not going to allow them to say that they have a legitimate sphere of influence over other countries. Other countries make their own choices.
The Romanian people really know what Yalta means.
I know,
yes.
Exactly. So that's why I say this here, because I don't think neither you. We were lucky to end up on the western side of that divide. But I mean, we felt the pain in a sense that a Europe that was supposed to be whole was divided. And at that time, Romania was very far away, politically and in all aspects. The fact that we now are very close NATO partners, that you're members of the EU, that we hold frequent meetings, that we invest together, that we think, we share important military capacities and security. This is really mind-boggling. It's a very good thing, and it shows that things can be better. And I've seen things become better before, so I think they can be better in the future also.
From the perspective of Norwegian institutions and intelligence assessments, what is the real situation inside Russia today?
So our reading, and I have to say, what we see, and we follow closely, obviously, as a neighbor, is very consistent with what I heard President Zelensky say today, who, of course, is closer than anyone to exactly this, is that Russia is not on the verge of collapse, but the economy is struggling. More and more resources are moved to the military sector. It's basically the only place there's any kind of innovation and where you have good jobs. The civilian part of the Russian economy is lagging behind. Ukraine is increasingly effective in inflicting pain on, for instance, export facilities for Russian oil and so on. So they really feel it, and the sanctions work. Now we're around the time of a 20th sanction package, already discussion of a 21st, and these sanctions, they do not cripple Russia, but it weakens their position very much. Sadly, the war in the Gulf has given Russia some advantages, because suddenly the oil price was up, and the Americans removed some of the sanctions on Russian oil because they wanted to get the oil price down. But I think that's a temporary situation. I think the long-term trajectory is that Russia is not in a good place, and the fact that they're closing internet, they're closing down Telegram, is also a sign to the Russians, including the middle-class people in St. Petersburg and Moscow, that things are not good. Because I think my sense is that when wealthy middle-class people in St. Petersburg realize that they can't access the internet because the government closed it down, that's a sign that the government is not happy with things. And I should say that makes me happy.
Is Europe prepared for a long-term confrontation with hybrid threats, cyber warfare and disinformation campaign? We saw this in Romania in the last 2 years ago.
Actually, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I gave a major speech on Europe in the Norwegian Parliament before I took the plane to come here. And I mentioned Romania and I mentioned Moldova as countries who both were very severely affected, but also which learn how to deal with this. So the rest of us can take some lessons from what both Bucharest and Chisinau has learned from these massive attempts for manipulation. So I used that in my speech to say that we should learn from those who've been in the front line. We see some of the same, not at all, not any close to the level you saw it in Romania, but we know that there are foreign actors out there, Russian and others, who are actively trying not only to share, spin false information, but also try to accelerate populist tendencies and disagreements that already exist. What they have developed is the capacity to look at already existing disputes and then make them worse by fueling with a lot of bots and so on, fueling this conflict. Why? Because they want to increase tension and reduce the togetherness and solidarity in Western countries. Because the worst thing Russia and Putin, not all Russians are Putin, but the Putin government wants, the last thing they want is an effective Europe. This is exactly why I'm in favor of an effective Europe.
As tensions rise in the Arctic, what do you see as the biggest risks facing region today?
So, so I live in, much of Norway is in the Arctic, and just to our north we have the Arctic. And I'll give you an interesting geographical fact which you might know, but I don't think all the viewers know. The east of Norway is further east than Romania. So Kirkenes, which is where you go above Sweden and Finland, and then you come to Russia, and that part of Norway is further east than Bucharest. It's actually further east than your Black Sea coast. So we meet Russia there, and what we meet there is the Kola Peninsula nuclear bases. That is the largest concentration of nuclear weapons on the planet, and it's where Russia has its second strike capability on submarines. So this is a very interesting area in a heightened security tension or heightened conflict. And this means that Arctic security is also about high end, but it's also about maintaining sort of good relations in the Arctic Ocean and in the Arctic countries in a difficult time. And this is something we work in on a daily basis.
What significance does the Bucharest B9 format have today? The next step is the summit in Ankara after this.
Yeah, so this was a very good stop on the road to Ankara, I would say, at the highest level. And this meeting was a B9, Bucharest 9, plus the 5 Nordics. So we were, and this is interesting because, as I said, the Black Sea, Baltic Sea, Barents Sea are connected. There's a line of NATO countries which all together, go all the way from the Arctic to the Black Sea. That there's all NATO, and we need to speak. It's particularly important that our countries speak together. So we Nordics, we very much welcome that we were invited. We hope that we will be invited actually to the Warsaw summit of B9 next year. And the Finnish president actually said that maybe we should make this into BN14, which would be the 9 and the 5 Nordics, because we have so much in common. So it was a good place to talk about Ankara, because every country here cares about NATO. Every country wants a good relationship to the US. And all these countries are also committed to Europe. So I think this a stronger Europe in a stronger NATO is a shared message coming out of this in the statement that we made, and the need for continued support for Ukraine. And I should also mention that we need to work to help Moldova, a small neighbor of Romania, important, culturally close, economically close. But we, believe it or not, Norway takes a lot, has a lot of effort in trying to assist the Maia Sandu president and the government of Moldova to succeed in their journey, political journey westwards, because it's so important for Europe, and it's very important also for Ukraine.
And it's my last question, Your Excellency. In a world marked by wars and geopolitical fragmentation, can diplomacy still prevent major conflicts?
Yes,
Works
I think so.
Diplomacy today?
Yeah, no, well, I think yes. I think, you know, there's always been an interplay. There was I'm a political scientist, and one of the grand masters of political science is Raymond Aron, who was a French professor, and he said that the state is, he says philosophically, that the state is represented by the soldier and the diplomat. And diplomacy always happens in the shadow of war. So diplomacy is the alternative to war. It's a little harsh, but what he means is that war is always an opportunity, but normally you can agree by having good diplomacy, good agreements, by agreeing on certain rules of the game. And the good news is, and I'm happy to say that in a difficult time, most countries on the planet want rule of law. Most countries on the planet like the UN Charter. Most countries think that it's better to solve problems by cooperating than by fighting. So the exceptions are exceptions, and they are bad exceptions. But you know, the normal relations between countries, for instance, Romania and Norway, and most of our neighbors, is that we want to solve problems together and we want to prosper together, and we are frankly stronger together.
Your Excellency, it was a real honor. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Diplomația înseamnă dialog și empatie, să-l înțelegi pe cel de lângă tine cu care te așezi la masa negocierilor și să poți să vezi dincolo de lucrurile care reprezintă o certitudine pentru tine ca diplomat. În final, tot ceea ce contează sunt interesele strategice ale României. Sunt Vlad Ungar și vă mulțumesc pentru atenție. Ne revedem săptămâna viitoare la Lumea Diplomatică.